And we have then Jonathan Lind and Jørgen Randers, Kristin Halvorsen and Rasmus Benestad. And I will give them each a question, and then we'll open up for the audience. So keep your questions ready or post them up there on the Twitter stream. So first, Jonathan Lind, I really liked your presentation of how a journalist is kind of squeezed into, what you call it, tight shirt. And you said that you'd want to do training of scientists in communication and dialogue and storytelling. And Rasmus suggested in his lecture moving from talking to showing and more dialogue. First, do you think it will help? And two, can you actually make it happen? Or is it like walking straight into your table?
Thank you, Per Espen. Well, I mean, it can be done, that's for sure. And in fact, we have done it in this cycle. So we've organised media training for a lot of our authors as each report is released. We can't get through all of them. And other people working with us, like the UN Foundation in America, has trained hundreds of scientists around the world. And that's sometimes our authors, sometimes people outside the IPCC, and you do see some people really improving the way they deal with the media, and that's why I think we can build on that sort of thing and teach people communication skills and presentation skills as well, because as I said, and as Rasmus did as well, a lot of people, when they're giving presentations, are doing it for a scientific community, a scientific audience, as if they're lecturing their own students. And the whole way it's presented, they start off with the evidence and build up to conclusion. And really, it needs to be often completely the other way around. I showed examples of very powerful, good slides full of information that were completely unintelligible to anyone looking at them, and probably even illegible from the back of the room. And so there are simple ways of improving the way you communicate in presentation. So it can be done. Not everybody is receptive to this. Not everybody is a born gifted communicator, but it can be done and can be taught.
And do you have the funds to actually do it?
We have some funds, and as I say, we get help either directly or we get help indirectly from other people doing the same sort of thing. So the United Nations Foundation worked together with different academies of science around the world to train scientists in addition to our own internal efforts.
Thanks. And Jørgen, you opened this thing off with giving a 40-year perspective on this. And for 42 years, you've been trying to teach people long-term thinking. And when people actually save for their pension 30 or 40 years out, and every evening they brush their teeth to avoid dental cavities, why do you keep insisting that people are always short-term when it comes to climate?
Because they are. The thing that is standing in front of us is the fact that the audience does not want to hear the message. It is not that we are unclear. It is not that we do not know, what is happening. It is not that it is not being expressed in perfect ways. It is because people do not want to hear the message. They intuitively understand that if they receive the message, this will force a change in their lives, and they resist this. This will cost higher taxes or threaten their current jobs, and they don't want this. I'm absolutely convinced that this is the situation, and consequently we need to start thinking, how do we communicate when people absolutely do not want to hear the message? We then need to understand why they don't want to hear the message. This is because it is a threat in the short term. In other words, we have to come up with solutions that not only solve the climate problem in the long run, but also has a short-term advantage to a majority of the voters. So what is an example? Instead of selling electric cars because they do solve the climate problem 30 to 60 years down the line, we need to sell Teslas that are sexy and accelerate fast and people would like to own, although they cost twice as much as a normal car. As an aside, it also helps solve the long-term problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen. Kristin, I saw you were quoted up on the Twitter stream as coming out as a climate optimist because of the private sector. And that is interesting to hear from somebody who's been active on the left side of the politics for so long. And also, when you quote these kind of examples, have you given up on politics?
No. No, I have not, but I don't think that the majority of politicians feel the pressures from the voters when it comes to climate action. And of course I mean that scientists on climate systems, they should tell us the truth about the situation. But I think what we are discussing now underlines the need for social scientists connected to all kind of climate work. Because I think that people hear too often those who are engaged in environmental questions as if they were campaigning for dommedag, the judgment day.
Apocalypse.
Yeah. And of course you don't want to be part of a movement that really are, you know...
into doom.
Into doom. Yeah, that is for some, what can I say, religious. Yeah.
Are you speaking about Jürgen, yes?
I think that is why I think Steffen Kalbekken, he is going to speak later today about green nudging. And I'm sure that he will mention a lot of examples where you can do quite simple things and be a part of the climate solution. And I think that is very important. I will be like a vacuum cleaner to positive examples. That is not only for that could, you know, gather people to do something in common when it comes to climate issues. And that is a really very important point in your book too. How to be positive, how to make climate action not an individual question, but as a part of a group. And it's, I think that is very inspiring because it also will affect the political discussion. And it will make it more visible what it is possible to do. And I think also make the pressure into politics greater. We've tried, you know, to, alarm.
We've tried doom.
We tried doom. Let's try something positive.
Thanks, Kristin. Rasmus, you showed a lot of science blogs, and there was no lack of scientific information, and even well pointed with the headlines first out there. You ended up on a little bit nostalgic or unclear note. Has it worked? But why not flip it around? Why do you think your opponents, the What's Up With That blog, is so successful? Why has that become the most popular blog on the web for climate debate?
That's a good question. I think real climate has been a bit too heavy. I think skeptical science is more popular on that side. It's easier, it's more layman term, whereas real climate was a bit more scientific in a way. So it still has this sort of taint of being a scientist. And again, I think it comes back to what Jürgen says, that What's Up is basically that dismissing the whole thing. It's like, it's much more convenient. Yes. but I think my job, and also both at the Norwegian Met Institute and also Real Climate, is to try to provide the best facts we have, and also say why we think these are the best facts. Why do we think it is like this? And then I think we should talk to people like, say, engineers or people from different parts of the society, like, say, through Tekna, and say that, well, there are lots of solutions and there are lots of opportunities too. And so you have, I think, like Kristin says, we have to work on the sort of positive sides. And then I think we also need some more new role models. Because I think if a person you really admire and you stands there and talks to you like, this is the way it is, I think that makes a much bigger impression than if somebody who stands there with a white coat and it looks like, somebody who's just been dragged out to a laboratory. It's a big difference. So we need, and this is the reason why I say we need to have this sort of collaboration, try to find these role models and sort of support them and actually make them as sort of ambassadors or team like leaders. And I think that can make a big difference.
Thanks. It looks Jürgen wants a comment before we let questions.
You may be wondering why I always wear a dark suit and a tie. This is because since I was the head of Lavutslippsutvalget, who reported in the fall of 2006 on how Norway can reduce its greenhouse gas emissions by 60% by 2050 in a unanimous utvalg, I spent 4 years trying to convince Norwegians that this is worth doing, because the cost of doing it is 10 billion Norwegian kroner per year, which translate into 2,000 kroner per Norwegian per year. This is the same as increasing the income tax level from 36%, which is what you currently pay, to 37%. It took me 4 years, initially with a white coat, later on with a dark suit and tie, to try to convince Norwegians to do this. Finally, in the vote, the Miljøpartiet De Grønne got less than 3%. So 97% of the people think that it is not worth paying 2,000 kroner per year at this point in time to get an uncertain benefit for their children and grandchildren 30 to 60 years into the future. This is the challenge to the communications people. Get through on this thing. And yes, you must not do it with white dresses, but you cannot do it with a dark suit either.
And with that provocation, we'll open up for questions from the audience to the panel. So what are your questions to the... And please keep them as short as possible. So I have registered 3. We start with Per Arild Garnåsjordet, Bjørn, and then up there.
Very short question for Mr. Salvorsen. Yes. You may have looked on the national budget document, and perhaps you were as surprised as I was when I found out that the chapter on sustainability was dropped. It's split up in different parts, but it's not this kind of long-term policy statements that should be there. You have been responsible for this document for 4 years, so I would like your opinion on that. Thanks.
Do you want to answer right away, Kristin, or should we do another question first?
Maybe some more questions?
Yeah, Bjørn, are you okay with coming down? I'm sorry, the mic. Oh, you have a microphone.
I have a mic. Yes, Bjørn Høgler from DNVGL. I think Jürgen said we have enough knowledge, and we have basically had it for quite a while. We also discussed that probably in the transformation we are onto into a low carbon society, it's huge investments we need to take, and most of them will be more expensive than business as usual. So my question is, how is it possible to do that in a democracy?
Okay, and you?
Pernille Sapa, Meteorologisk institutt. Nå stod det plutselig stille, så jeg hørte etter. Var det noen andre, så kom jeg inn igjen.
Okay. Yeah, good. We'll let loose the... Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, go on if you had it.
Jeg lurer på om det kan være en blindvei, og vårt panel kan kommentere på om det kan være en blindvei. Vi snakker så mye om å forstå hva som egentlig skjer. Forståelse rundt dette her. Jeg kommer aldri til egentlig forstå hva Erasmus driver med, men jeg kan ha tillit til ulike mennesker. Så vidt jeg husker, så ble det noen år siden så ble det gjort en undersøkelse hvor det ble vist at I'm sorry, I speak Norwegian.
It's okay. I can translate into English. Yeah.
There was a study that showed that people voting for the Socialistic Party made a bigger ecological footprint than people voting for the Progressive Party, merely because they make more money, and we make, as a public, we make footprints according to how much money we make. So I would think people from the Socialistic Party have more awareness, they have more understanding and interest, and yet they don't do different. How can we maybe have people do different and not just understand more?
Thanks. So is knowledge really a prerequisite, or is it a blind alley? So let me start with you, Kristin, since you got a very direct question here from Per Arild. What's your comment on the disappearance of the sustainability section in the national government's budget?
That is because they have never bothered or cared about it. It used to be a part of the national budget from the Minister of Finance, because we should go through the sustainability in the budget and present that for Parliament. And now it's taken away. It's not a surprise. Siv Jensen has never been interested in or cared about this, and her voters will not punish her for that. So I think that it's a consequence of the election. Yeah, and that is because caravans and motorbikes and all these kind. So yeah, special vehicles have reduced taxes. But I think it's really very important that we underline the positive message, because there is a lot of things that people really would like to be a part of if they could be together with others and know that they could do something that really improve the climate quality and yeah. So I think that is what the NGOs and the environmental movements has failed to do.
Okay, I would like to jump a little bit. If you could take the lady's question on terms of knowledge and say that to you, Jonathan. Is just continuing pushing the knowledge, is that a blind alley?
Well, it comes down to what Jürgen was saying. People won't do anything until they want to do it. And so one of the things we're trying to do now, and of course a lot of people around us are doing as well, is outreach. So we make sure that we talk about the report to different audiences, and of course, despite what I was saying in my presentation, when you're actually standing up talking in front of people, you can simplify things if you want. You can present them in a more accessible way. And so we take our report to different countries and to different audiences in those countries. And one group that we're talking to now, where we've encountered a lot of interest, is religious groups, because there's an ethical dimension to climate change, and that is discussed in the Working Group 3 report. We actually have an Oxford philosopher on the scientists team to look at the ethical issues. A few people looking at that, and I think once people look at the religious questions, not only of developed and developing countries, but the generational question, then I think people will start to want to find a solution, and that's the way, and then they'll be receptive to the knowledge and the facts. But until they want to do something, they won't. If I could just pick up on things that all my co-panelists mentioned. This report, we've very deliberately framed it not in terms of doom and gloom and judgment day and disaster and everything. It's explicitly framed in terms of risk management. So there there are threats, yes, that there are threats to climate change, but there are also opportunities, and there are threats and opportunities to different courses of action and to inaction, and we evaluate all of those as well. And I think that's something which everyone, we all in our daily lives understand risk management, because we look at risks of whether it's taking out fire insurance on our house or crossing the road or getting onto an airplane. We all understand that, and also in terms of business, they work in a risk management way. So that makes it, I think, already the whole thing a bit more accessible and understandable. And of course, one of the things we look at in the Working Group 2 and 3 reports are the co-benefits, which I think you talked about some of them, but things like dealing with reducing emissions will improve air pollution, and so it improves people's health and reduces the costs of healthcare and so on. So there are positive messages in all this that can be played up as well, just as you were saying.
Thank you. Jørgen, with the last word. Short comments, particularly to Bjørn's question on finance.
Democracy can only handle and solve the climate challenge if democracy proves capable of passing the necessary regulations that are necessary to force individuals to spend money in the short term in order to save the problem in the long run, and to make it possible for those companies that choose a climate-friendly technology, which is more expensive than a clean technology, to survive in competition with the others. So the only way in which democratic society can handle the climate thing is by agreeing on regulation, which basically means higher taxes and stronger government. And since there is such a vast majority of people who are silly enough to believe that individual voluntary action among people and voluntary action in the corporate world is actually going to solve the problem, we are stalemate. So the point is, we need political parties that are in favor of stronger regulation, more collective action, higher taxes, and a stronger, more authoritarian government. That is what is going to solve the problem, and this is the only thing that is going to solve the problem.
That's a fantastic... Yeah, okay. And with that point, we're really ready for a break. But okay, Kristin is used to having the last word, so very short.
I just like to repeat what I said during my speech, namely that voters have more power than they are aware of. Because I was the Minister of Finance and I increased the taxes on petrol med 10 øre, and it was
huge outcry.
A huge outcry. And the Labour Party, which we were, governing together with, they would never do it again. Never ever, because it was the most unpopular thing we've ever done.
So I hope
that is you need the voters to create brave politicians.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll do a break to 11:05, 5 minutes after the delayed break. So please be back 11:05. And thank you to the panel again. Wonderful.